Welcome to the Slow Home Studio. Let's take a closer look at that return air vent issue.
Yeah, this is a design dilemma because every house needs them. They're critical to the operation of the furnace, but typically there's something that is just slapped onto the wall. They're cheaply made, and there's no integration between the vent and any of the other trim work.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because it really is part of the furnace system, and the furnace is something that gets hidden away in the mechanical room, and you don't really see it, except for this one little pimple on the wall, and it really is atrocious. And it's like what Sarah said, very much like the drain in the shower and the bath vent in a bathroom ceiling, something that needs some attention.
And it drives people crazy when they're badly installed.
Yeah.
So here's an example of one, and this is just a hole cut in a wall, which is typically what a cold air return is.
Well, it has to be.
That's what it is. In this case, they've run the baseboard underneath it, and this thing just gets screwed on top. These are very cheaply thin metal with screws, not attractive to look at.
No, and there you go. That's proof of it. This one's up in the ceiling.
Let's just plunk it on the wall and call it a day. So what do you do? I mean, what do you do? Here's an idea. This is one of our projects. We try to think of them as being more integrated with the trim. And in this case, we have made it out of the same MDF as the baseboard, painted it the same color, and tried to match the proportion of the baseboard so it fits more seamlessly into the trim work of the house.
One of the things you really have to remember, however, is that these things are designed from a technical point of view, and you do not want to restrict the flow of air getting back to the furnace by either making the vents too small, making the holes too narrow, any of those things, because all that's going to do is just make your house not work properly and be more energy inefficient.
Yeah, you're raising a really good point, because if you do go and manufacture one yourself, you have to make sure that you have the correct airflow. So there are companies, and this is from one of our millwork suppliers here in Calgary, and they create vents that are integrated into the trim work, so they're a little bit more robust. And I think this is an alternate approach. Rather than going with something that's very thin and cheap, you can go with something that's a little bit more robust, a little bit more detail-oriented, and then it's lacquered out in the same color as the rest of the trim.
And just one last thing to look for, the difference between that thin sheet metal and this one is that the trim can actually die into it. So it's a little bit thicker than the baseboard, and it runs into that, and it gives a kind of solidity that's really important.
Yeah, that's a much nicer detail. If you're interested in learning more about the principles of slow home design, you can pick up a copy of our book entitled What's Wrong with This House? It's a practical guide to finding a well-designed and sustainable home. It's available for sale on the Slow Home Studio website. It's also available for sale at Amazon.com in both paperback and the Kindle format.